Life Esidimeni Family Committee member Christine Ngumalo joins me now. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I imagine a sense of relief after today. What's your general sense of that meeting you had with the Premier and how it went?
It was actually, we had the meeting with the acting Premier, Banyaza Lesufi, and basically the reason why we were at lockerheads, it was because the first group of payments were very smooth and easy. With this group, unfortunately, because they didn't have the lawyers to, I suppose, to safeguard with, in terms of legalities and stuff, the Premier had a bit of a difficulty to pay the money without proper processes, I suppose, which is, in their case, would be the master's office. So what the families did not want to go through that process. They felt that they wanted to be treated exactly the same way as the previous families. But the difference there is they don't have the lawyers, whereas we had lawyers in the beginning. So, but when we eventually, sat literally for a whole day and just tried to come to some agreement, and eventually we did. And the families were very happy with that. And
let's talk about then the agreement that you've been able to come to. What does it entail?
Well, it basically entails the families as a unit, each individual family going to the master's office and nominating an individual who will receive the money. Because what happened with the previous payments is that whoever came forward and lodged a claim was paid. It left the families in a lot of sticky situations because a lot of families are now coming forward and saying,
this was the wrong person.
Yes, so that government thought, you know what, they cannot, do that because one, it's taxpayers' money, but also at the same time it puts the families at risk. So it was a process that they felt would protect everybody.
Previously, one of the issues that had been raised by the second group of families was also that the process that the department was taking was perhaps to create loopholes and to delay the process by which they were actually going to get these payments. After your negotiations, are you settled with even the process itself, and have those concerns of delays or perhaps, government wanting to find a back door? Are you satisfied that that is not what is happening here?
Look, you can't blame the families when there's silence, and every time you call, you don't get feedback. So that was the feeling that the families had, and understandably so. With this second tranche of actually, us sitting down, all the parties, like the master's office was in the meeting, the legal team was there, Premier's office was there, and everybody that needed to be involved was actually there. So it was a lot easier because it was as transparent as it could be. And the beauty part about it is whatever this agreement that we've reached now will protect every family member that comes claiming. So it works very well for you.
And on the part of the families, of course, there has been disputes, and you allude to it, amongst the family members themselves over who these monies should go to. And, it was an issue that came up even during the hearings themselves, that some families were not taking care of those that were being looked after at these various institutions. So how do you and how has the department decided to resolve that issue when it comes to who then receives these monies?
In the beginning, I think what former Chief Justice Saneke assumed is that if you're lodging a claim at this stage, it means you have walked the road. You understand the processes, and obviously you care enough for your loved one to be there. And he left it to the lawyers to ensure that it's the right person. But unfortunately, the lawyers could not do that because they don't know the home situation. So in order to actually avoid the situation now, the master's office has been called on board to basically verify that indeed you are so-and-so's sister, so-and-so's brother, or mother or daughter, or whatever the case may be. But also what the process is calling for is that the families should go as a unit and do that. Because some of the families were actually saying that there's records of who was visiting, and the government is saying, unfortunately, it's a tedious process. It will delay the process even longer. So, the families had to eventually concede to going through the master's office process. And to be honest with you, it also protects them because it means that the money will be put into a particular account, and they have to account once a year to the master's office as to what has happened to that money. To be honest with you, it is a It's safe. It's really safe for everybody, for government, for the families, and for the patient as well.
And in terms of what happens to the money, interesting there that the Master's Office will be keeping tabs on that money. I mean, are there conditions attached to it?
Well, one of the conditions, and to be honest with you, and this is for the surviving families, we still have to deal with the deceased families, because there's another process that they need to follow, and we're currently still negotiating with the government on that one. But for the surviving families, the one request or one thing that the Master's Office has requested is that when they want an amount of 200,000, want to use an amount of 200,000, the Master's Office requires that they justify the amount, you know, what they will be using it for. Will it benefit the patient? Will it benefit the families? Is it legitimate what they want to do, etc.?
And certainly, I think that will be good in order to keep tabs on what exactly people are using and spending,
and that the money
spending that
just
money
on nothing really, that, you know, that, because the patient has to benefit from this process as well.
Absolutely. What sense then do you end this year off in? Because, you know, it's the final day at least before we get into the long holidays and the long weekends. Where are you as the families and the overall treatment that you've received, and I think the kind of attention you've had in terms of resolving all of these issues?
To be honest with you, initially when the families were not getting the information that they required, because they were supposed to be paid on the 10th of December, but because of these legalities that government realized, you know, would come back and actually haunt them really, they kept quiet. They didn't inform the families. But this decision actually, it was a decision, in fact, it was a decision that the families were there to witness. They were able to say, nay, yay, they don't like this. But also, they understand. They're now starting to understand, because a lot of the families in those meetings we've had would say, you know, somebody in our family received the money, but we didn't get the money.
Yeah.
So they now started to understand why this process was important. So it's ending in a decent year, and one family member has actually been paid already, and the information was loaded, I think, a day before yesterday. So there is hope that everything will go smoothly.
All right, well, we'll certainly keep watch on this story in the new year. All the best for the festive season. Life Esidimeni Family Committee member Christine Ngumalo.